The title of my subject this morning is Ministry, Money, and Management. And I've subtitled it True Stewardship in the Church. Now I want to ask a question. Well, one assertion I want to make right off the bat is that we're very rich in this country. The poorest person in this room is extraordinarily rich compared to the rest of the world. Give you some idea of what I'm talking about here. If you go back and look at the end of World War II, at that time, all of the industrialized world was in ruins. Western Europe, Japan. The only place where there was a viable economic machine was the United States. As a result of that, the United States became, in the 50s, incredibly wealthy. The wealth in the United States grew tremendously. And even some 40 years later, in 1985, the gross national product, which is the sum of all the goods and services that our country produces in an annual period of time, was 3 times that of Japan and 4 times that of West Germany, 2 of the most industrialized countries in the world. By the way, does anybody here know how many countries, how many nations we have around the globe today? It changes a little from time to time. Last count, there was, somebody know here?
210.
Around 210, 212, something like that was the last number that I heard. Did you know that Walmart by itself is bigger than the economies of 161 nations? Now that kind of puts the wealth in our country in perspective, doesn't it? And yet we struggle personally and in the church with the issues of money and finance. Why is that? Well, I would suggest to you that there are really 2 reasons that we struggle for that. Number 1 is lack of knowledge. Sometimes we just don't really know what needs to be done. We really haven't been taught. In fact, the culture has taught us the wrong things. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Secondly, though, is this issue of discipline. James, doesn't he tell us about the issue of discipline? You can hear the word, but if you don't put that word to work, if you don't become a doer of the word, then it doesn't do you much good, does it? It's the same thing with issues of finance and stewardship in the church. Even if we have the knowledge, then we have got to put that knowledge to use. So in this little workshop today, we're going to talk about some knowledge issues, give you some information, but it's going to be up to you to put that knowledge to work. All right? So take good notes and raise questions. Stop me anytime you want. Proverbs tells us, he who is impulsive exalts folly. So we want to be knowledgeable, but we also want to apply discipline. Let's talk about money just a moment, what money is. Let me ask you that question. Can you tell me what money is? Is that what Scripture tells us? The love of money that's the root of all evil, isn't it? Okay? Yes?
It's a legal tender to do business, to buy and sell.
That's exactly right. The main thing money is a medium of exchange. It came out of the need to do away with the barter system. If I was a farmer and I raised cattle, but I wanted to go down and I needed some flour to make biscuits with, and I take my cow, or one of my cows down, and I want to trade it to the guy who has the flour mill, I don't need a dump truck load of flour, do I? 10 pounds probably would do me for a while. So money came about as a medium of exchange to make the issue of barter, the problems with bartering go away. And you could use, money would have a certain value, and you could use that in exchange and not have to do any bartering. Secondly, money is amoral. Now please note I did not say immoral. It's amoral. By that I mean it's neither good nor bad. It's like, like electricity or fire. Fire can be a great thing. It can help warm you, it can cook your food, it can also burn down your house and can kill you, okay? You can die in a fire. So money is kind of like that. It's not good or bad in and of itself. It's how it's used that makes it good or bad. Thirdly, money is always active, never static. There's a course on personal finance I teach from time to time, and I tell folks that you hear these deals of no interest, no payments for 60 days, 6 months, or whatever. Those deals do not exist. We don't have time to get into that today, but it doesn't exist. Why? Because money is never static. It's always changing in value. It's always either earning interest or you're having to pay interest on that money. So it's never static. And then finally, extreme amounts of money or lack thereof magnifies character. Would you agree with me on that? Generally does. I don't know how many of you have seen some of the recent documentaries about lottery winners. What typically happens to a lottery winner? Bliss and happiness for the rest of their life? No, sir. The vast majority of lottery winners, it ruins their lives. Saw a documentary not too long ago about a person out in the western states somewhere that won several $1 million in the lottery. Within 2 years, he had lost his family and had committed suicide. So that sort of thing can destroy your life. And so maybe it's a good thing that the Lord hasn't made us all rich in spite of our wishes sometimes. Let's talk a minute about the importance of budgets. I have a good friend who is on staff at a large church down in Georgia, and he teaches a personal finance course at that church. He never uses the word budget. He said that word is just not in my vocabulary because it has such a negative connotation. Most people, when they think of budget, according to him, think of the word can't. Budget means I can't do this, I can't do this, you can't do the other. Question. I'm going to call on somebody, put you on the spot here. When I mention the word stewardship, what's the first word that comes to your mind?
Tithe.
What's that?
Tithe.
Tithe, okay. Tithe, what is tithe? Money, right? Gift to the church. When we talk about stewardship, that's typically the first thing that comes to everybody's mind. Giving to the church, giving to God. Okay? Biblically, we're required to do that. That's one of the things that the Lord tells us to do in Scripture. Stewardship, though, is really much more than simply tithing or giving or those sorts of things, even though that's what we typically mean when we talk about stewardship. The word steward, what does it really mean? If we look behind the word steward.
Oversight.
Oversight, management, right? So when we talk about stewardship, we're talking about managing. Managing something for someone else. Managing something that belongs to someone else. Now, according to the way I understand Scripture, there's only one thing that I own, and that's my own free will. Everything else I have has been given to me by God Himself. Even the breath I breathe comes from Him, and I have no control over that and no guarantee over that. It's in His timing and His place. So everything that we have, our time, our talent, all of our financial treasure and other material blessings, all of that comes from the Lord. And to me, stewardship has to do with managing all of those things in a way that brings glory and honor to the Lord and conforms with His will and His purpose for our lives. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today when we talk about this issue of stewardship. Now, as we've heard said before, none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. But I wonder if any of us feel kind of like this guy in the cartoon here. This is reassuring. 75% of the churches in America make the same mistakes that we do. Okay? Does that give you any comfort to know that you're not alone? Actually, it shouldn't. It shouldn't. Simply because there's a lot of people out there who are struggling with some of the same issues. Doesn't give you much comfort when you're struggling with a problem.